Hey everybody, welcome to Mr. Schauber's presentation of the Winter Olympics. And the Winter Olympics don't go back as far in history as the Summer Olympics do. There aren't as many events in the Winter Olympics, but there are still some awesome events and some really fun things that happen. A lot of fun things to watch and some great athletes throughout the history of the Winter Olympics. So let's look at a few of the greatest American athletes to ever participate in the Winter Games. We'll start with Peggy Fleming. At the 1968 Olympics in Grenoble, France, she won the gold medal in ladies singles figure skating. And of course, the singles figure skating is the most popular event in figure skating. So the male singles, the female singles, and they have pairs and things like that. But to win the singles is very prestigious. And she was just a young woman at the time. Um, Believe it or not, her gold was the only one for the entire U.S. Olympic team at those Olympics. But in figure skating, these athletes will train for years. I mean, they'll get up at 4 in the morning and go practice and for a few hours, and when you like you're in high school and you go to high school and take classes all day, and then you get done with school and you go back and train more, right? And of course, training for the Olympics is a nonstop endeavor. And so, but the Olympics are once every 4 years, right? And so, what do you do in between if you're a skater? Well, you have national competitions and you have world competitions. And so, not only did she win the '68 Olympic gold, but she was the five-time U.S. national champ 5 times in a row from 1964 to '68, and she was 3 time in a row world champion from '66 to '68. So she was at the top of her game when she won that gold in the Olympics, and she was fantastic. America's sweetheart was Dorothy Hamill at the 1976 Olympics in Austria. She also won the gold medal in ladies singles figure skating, and she was only 19 years old, and everybody just loved her, right? And this is the mid 70s, and so if you look at pictures of women from the mid 70s, especially younger women, uh, they almost all got their hair cut like Dorothy Hamill. Okay, I mean that was the thing to do. Dorothy Hamill wins the gold. She's everybody's favorite, and so all the women start cutting their hair like her. Um, she also won the world championship that year in 1976, and she was 3 time consecutive U.S. national champ, 74, 75, 76. So she was awesome. And again, you win a gold medal in singles figure skating, you're kind of a legend forever. All right, and Dorothy Hamill is. Scott Hamilton's a really cool story, an interesting story. As a kid, he was really sick. He had this illness that doctors just couldn't quite pinpoint. And one doctor suggested that he just really go out and exercise. Okay, he's kind of a small guy. He wasn't growing um, quite as well as kids his age, and he was really ill. And people thought he might pass away. Well, a doctor said go out and exercise, strenuous exercise. Let's see what happens. And so he started skating, and he was able to regain his health. And then at the 1984 Olympics in Bosnia, he won the gold medal in the men's singles figure skating. And that was kind of the capstone for him because he had been a 4 time U.S. national champ, 81 to 84, and 4 time world champ, 81 to 84. So he was dominating the sport there for those 4 straight years. After the Olympics in '84, he helped start the touring company Stars on Ice. There's not a lot of money in figure skating itself, of course, because the Olympics are uh, an amateur deal, and you might be able to go around and people pay to watch you skate occasionally here and there in certain performances, but he figured out how to make money doing this, and so the Stars on Ice, he recruited other great skaters and famous skaters, um, and they would go around and do their performances and make good money. And of course, off of the Stars on Ice idea, Disney on Ice came about, and I mean, so anyway, his signature move was his backflip on the ice. That was, and he was amazing. Okay, so I encourage you go to YouTube and watch a Scott Hamilton backflip. Pretty impressive. Now we talked about figure skaters. Let's talk about speed skaters. Eric Heiden is one of the great speed skaters in history. Now, if you look at the skates, the speed skates are they're bigger than the figure skates, right? The blade is much longer, and so this is a really fun sport to watch. And Eric Heiden dominated. The first and only American to win 5 gold medals in a single Winter Olympics. Now, the thing about speed skating is that you have your short distance. You have three events that are considered kind of short distance, where really it's more of a sprint. And then you have the two events that are long distance. So it's almost like a sprint versus a marathon type thing, right? And so the 500, 1,000, 1,500, 5,000, and 10,000 meters. At the 1980 Olympics in Lake Placid, New York, he won gold in all 5 events and set an Olympic record in 4 of them and a world record in 1 of them. Uh, he was just on fire. He was the greatest single performance we had ever seen in a Winter Olympics. And usually, you get these speed skaters, they'll kind of specialize in either the sprints or the long distance, but not both. But he did. And, like I wrote on there, he's the only athlete in the history of speed skating to have won all 5 events in a single Olympics. And, I mean, just wow, incredible. You know, like figure skating has its, non-Olympic events as well. Well, figure speed skating does too. And they have their world championships and things like that. And he won a bunch of medals at world championships and all around championships and all kinds of things. But you can see he set 15 skating world records in his career, and he just was just amazing. So if you look though, it's what's so interesting. We'll talk about this in just a second. At any other Olympics, the guy that wins 5 gold medals in 5 events is going to be like the story, right? The hero, the headliner. Well, it just so happened that Eric Heiden was outdone in the 1980 Olympics by uh, somebody else or a group. And so, kind of crazy. I'm sure he doesn't care, but any other Olympics, he just would have been the all time legend. Well, not this one because of what else happened in the 1980 Olympics. Probably the greatest American female speed skater is Bonnie Blair. She was in 4 Olympics. Now, most Olympic athletes, they have a short window, a small window uh, of time when they're in their prime that they can, be in the Olympics. I mean, because the Olympics are once every 4 years. And so, usually when they're younger and things, and as they get older, they usually don't qualify for the Olympics anymore. Well, she was in 4 Olympics: 1984, 1988, 1992, and then 1994. You're saying, wait a minute, that was only 2 year apart. Well, yeah, because there was the Summer and Winter Olympics in 1992, and that was the last year that they did both Olympics in the same year. They decided then to stagger them. And so the next Winter Olympics after 92 were in 94, and then 98 and 2002 and so forth. And then the Summer Olympics stayed on that 4 year schedule from 92 to 96 to 2000 to 2004 and so forth. But 4 Olympics, and you can see what she did. In 1988, she won a gold and a bronze. In 1992, she won 2 golds. In 94, she won 2 golds. Just awesome, right? She was the most decorated U.S. Winter Olympian ever at the time of her induction in the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame in 2004. And, AP Female Athlete of the Year, Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. She was fantastic. Well, Bonnie Blair was the most decorated U.S. Olympian, Winter Olympian, until Apollo Anton Ono. He was a short track speed skater, okay? And so it was the more of the sprints that he kind of specialized in, although he did the 5,000 meters as well, um, the relay, 5,000 meter relay. But he is the most decorated U.S. Winter Olympian. He's won 8 Olympic medals in his time in the Olympics, over 3 different Olympics. 2002 here in Salt Lake, he won a gold and a silver. In 2006 in Italy, he won a gold and 2 bronze. And in 2010 in Vancouver, British Columbia, he won a silver and 2 bronze. He also um, has won a bunch of medals in the short track uh, world speed skating championships over his career, and he was a 12-time U.S. national champion. In fact, he became the youngest U.S. national champ ever in 1997 at the age of 14. So he was kind of like this phenom. And man, and watching that short track speed skating is pretty fun. Those guys are just in a full-on sprint, and they're going around the corners, and sometimes they wipe out, and it might one guy's wipeout might wipe out everybody, and but man, it's crazy. So Apollo Antonono was the uh, was the man in the short track speed skating as far as the U.S. team was concerned. All right, so who outdid Eric Heiden in the 1980 Olympics? Well, of course, it has to be the men's hockey team. The U.S. won gold in what I would consider the greatest upset in sports history ever, okay, of any sport. And so this is a group of college kids, and most of them came from either the University of Minnesota or Boston University, but they both were college, powerhouse teams in that era. But they were coached by the University of Minnesota head coach named Herb Brooks, and Herb Brooks picked his team. He got his players. Um, and he had a number of months to mold them into a a team that could play together. And a lot of these kids from Minnesota and Boston, because those were two dominant college programs, they played against each other in championships and 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 big games all the time. So a lot of those kids didn't like each other. So when Herb Brooks gets them, and he's got to make them into a cohesive unit and a team, okay, in the true sense of the word, it's a monumental task. And you know he does miracles, and those teams or those that team did miracles, and the teams they beat in the Olympics were good teams. Okay, so their first game they tied Sweden, and it was a round robin, or I should say a pool play. So you play everybody in your group, and then the leading team from that group would move on. Okay, um, and so they tied Sweden, who was a world class team. They beat Czechoslovakia, who was one of the highest ranked teams in the world. They crushed Czechoslovakia their second game. They beat Norway and then Romania and then West Germany. And then they went to the medal round because they won their pool. And their first game was against the Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union was the dominant hockey team in the world, had been for 20 years basically, and they were unbeatable. I mean, just at least it seemed that way. And it was a bunch of professionals, though. We had a bunch of college kids. The Soviets had a bunch of guys who were basically professionals, and they were allowed to play because they weren't in the NHL. They were like in their own professional league in the Soviet Union, and they'd played together for years and years, and their team chemistry was just amazing. And they just crushed everybody. And so it's assumed that we're going to get destroyed by them as well. And we had played them like a week before the Olympics in an exhibition game, and they'd beaten us. I was 10-3, I think. And they toyed with us. They could have scored 20 goals probably. And so the U.S. and the Soviets square off on February 22nd, 1980. And what do you know? The United States beats the Soviets. We beat them 4-3. We got behind 1-0, then we tie it up. Then we get behind 2-1 and we tie it up. And it was just, I mean, we're just back and forth, and we're always playing catch up kind of thing. And we get behind 3-2, and then we tie it up, and then we go ahead 4-3, and we hold on. And it, it's just inexplicable how this happens. That's why it's called the Miracle on Ice. Okay, and the movie Miracle is, which was made in 2004, is about this. And so, of course, in 1999, because of this, Sports Illustrated named the Miracle on Ice the top sports moment of the 20th century. The entire USA team won the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year in 1980. Their team won the Athlete of the Year in 1980, the Wide World of Sports Athlete of the Year as well in 1980. I mean, they were just, this was inconceivable. Okay. And so, what's crazy is that if you want to hear something like that, it's just random fact, but just also just inconceivable in today's world, is that this game was not televised on live TV uh, when it was happening. I don't know if the networks just thought that we'd get drubbed, and so they just, were just said, "Hey, we'll just replay it later, late at night or whatever." And you know, but back then in that era, you had to be in the arena, in the stadium, to watch it and know what was happening. There was no, unless they broadcast it on TV, and so there's no internet, no streaming or anything to keep up with this stuff, and so and no cell phones, right? That you could call somebody who might be there and get up to date analysis and information. And so what happened was this game was on tape delay, so it happened live, of course, in Lake Placid, but then it wasn't put on TV until after the game was already over. And so everybody that watched it, I guess, well, it was new to them. And so the Miracle on Ice, the greatest upset in sports history, wasn't actually broadcast on live TV. So, and we're, of course, now we live in an era where they can broadcast 50 college football games every Saturday if they want to, right, on live TVs. Uh, Crazy stuff. But the Miracle on Ice, pretty awesome. And let's look at another picture of it. Here's a bunch more pictures, right, of us scoring a goal there, and when the victory is secured, you have the team just mobbing each other there behind the goal. A couple pictures there, and then Herb Brooks, the legendary coach, uh, who passed away during the filming of the movie Miracle. So he never, so he's not with us anymore, and he never actually saw the movie. But the movie at the end, it's awesome because it says Herb Brooks never saw the movie, but he lived it. Okay, he lived the miracle, and he was the genius behind this team. And then on the victory stand to get the gold medal, our captain was Mike Eruzione, and so he of course accepted the first gold medal, around his neck, and but he called the whole team out. Right? Let's get all it. This is all of us, and that what a fitting moment and an awesome picture. And we'll finish off the presentation with Shaun White, the greatest snowboarder ever. Nicknamed by the Japanese the Flying Tomato because he used to have real long hair, and red, flowing hair. The Flying Tomato, and boy, he could fly. At the 2006 Olympics in Italy, he won gold medal in the men's halfpipe. At the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver, he won the gold in the men's halfpipe. And in the 2018 Olympics in South Korea, he won the gold in the men's halfpipe. Of course, he kind of became famous by winning a bunch of medals in the X Games, the Winter X Games in snowboarding and the Summer X Games with skateboarding. But in the Olympics, he cemented his legendary status. 3 golds in 3 different Olympics. So if you go, yeah, go to YouTube if you haven't seen him and just watch what he does on that half pipe. It is awesome.